July 1. So I wanted to share that and make sure everyone was aware of kind of that's why things are the way they are, and why when we reorg in June and then possibly have new people, it feels like the current people have a lot of duties and committees that they're on, and then it's like we have to redo it again in September because now all the new people are able to attend. So I didn't know if we wanted to put it on to reorg unless other things come up, or we keep where we are and then reorg in September. The only feedback that I received from the town was that while we don't typically meet over the summer, it is good to still have a point person. So at the very least in June or July, just voting for like a chair and a vice chair, so that way if conversations need to happen, if decisions need to be made, that they know who those people are. But the committees that are like CES or other subcommittees that actually don't start meeting till September or October, it would be fine to wait and do more of that whole reorg in September. So I just am sharing that with the committee, and however you guys want to handle it, but it just means that we'll be doing reorg. If new people are elected, we will do reorg in June, and then we would do reorg again in September.
Mm-hmm. The idea of just naming the one or two crucial people in our June meeting, and then leaving all the rest of the committees and whatnot and subgroups or whatever until the September meeting would be fine. The only question I have is, when is our first Union 28 meeting? Although that could go to the former person. And, if you're already been doing something, you could continue doing it for a meeting that came beforehand. So I would say we just get the people important to the lines of communication in case something was coming up done in June, and then do the rest in the fall. And I think we shouldn't be shy about dumping responsibilities on new people when they come in, so that we're not carrying everything and they're only carrying one thing.
I think not to muddy the waters, but a third option would be, unless the chair or vice chair aren't reelected or resign, that we just leave it until September. And September we do everything and only reorganize if there's a change in the chair or vice chair, because those are the two people that would need to be contacted over the summer for any sort of issues. So I kind of think just to not have a meeting for just one thing, if we reorganized in September, unless the chair either resigned or was not reelected, that person would just stay for continuity, and then in September we do the whole thing all at once when we hopefully have a full board, or late August, depending on when our first, when we choose our first meeting. So I think all of our versions though are kind of similar in the sense that we are saying try and be as efficient as possible with our meetings and how many times we need to reorganize. So so is this something that you guys want to vote a plan on right now, or
I don't know if we certainly can vote on it now. I don't know if it needs to be officially voted on, rather it just shared.
Agreement.
Yeah,
we need to agree to something.
The admin, Union 28, when they kind of go through because I think Pam just had it as an automatic of we add it to June's meeting no matter what kind of thing. And so maybe moving forward it's, automatic, we add it to September's meeting, including that information.
Let's just go with September meeting.
September?
Yep.
Okay.
Good enough for me.
I think that's reasonable. Okay, great. That's what we will do then. In the event that the chair resigns or is not reelected, we'll address that at that point. We'll have to have a meeting in between. All right, public hearing. It's a full house tonight. Is there any public hearing? Nope. All right, moving on. Approval of the minutes. So we have September 17th minutes And then we are still waiting on, is it July 25th? Or did we have that in here? Nope. So we will vote on September 17th, and then we are waiting on July 25th and August 7th.
I move we accept the minutes from September 17th as printed.
All right, is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, any other discussion? I've read through them, I thought they were good.
Same here.
Caitlin, anything, otherwise?
Nope, we're good.
All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
When Robin and I were trying to like figure out what was missing and stuff, I didn't have those listed out, so I will look into them. I don't know if one of them was the meeting that I was like en route and you were.
I think it was.
Okay.
Yep.
So we can definitely check on that and make sure
Yep.
we have them for next meeting.
Yep. All right, so moving on to the warrants, we've got quite a few warrants here. Individually, or we can do them as a batch.
I move that we accept all payroll warrants, 103, 104, 105, 106, and 107.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right. Any discussion about that?
Nope, I've looked at them.
All righty. So all in favor of that?
Aye.
Okay. And then do you want to do the same thing for the vendor?
I do.
All right.
So moved.
All right, so that means that we are voting on EES 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009. Are you including 1010 and 1011?
Yes.
Okay, so all the way through that batch. All right, is there a second?
Second.
Oh,
Or did I move?
I think you made the motion. I'll second it.
Great. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. And then lastly, it's our secondary, 1102, 1103, and 1104. Need a motion.
I
and
move
a
we
second?
accept them.
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. All right. Moving on. Gifts. Do we have any gifts or grants? No gifts. No gifts or grants. Okay. Report from the Gill Montague representative.
Good evening. I'm Jackie Boyden. I'm your Franklin County Tech representative and your Gill Montague representative, one of them. So, all right. So for the Gill Montague report, they're doing well, settling into the year. There's a few things that have already happened because of the date, but they upcoming. Oh, that already happened. That was October 4th. October 18th, on a Friday, Sheffield will have a trunk or treat in the Sheffield parking lot. They're going to be posting for various positions needed to run the after-school program at Sheffield Elementary. In the class of 2025 is going to have an outdoor movie night as a fundraiser on Friday, that was October 4th. Sorry about that. I likely missed the thing for everything. And that was really about it. They did do the MCAS scores, and they talked about that a little bit, but I didn't get to attend that meeting. Jen did, and I didn't get her notes on that. But things seem to be going well, and the next meeting is next week. Do you have any questions? All right. Yep.
No, I was just going to clarify. The trunk or treat is for Hillcrest and Sheffield elementary schools.
Oh, okay.
I know, they just like to call it Sheffield, but it's Hillcrest is in there
Oh,
too.
yes, you would know.
I would know.
Well, I'm going to say, I'm looking
Now
at
I
the
can
superintendent's
carefully.
report, and I'm only seeing Sheffield. I thought that was odd. Okay, for the Franklin County Tech School notes, they've hired a new assistant principal. His name is Ben Niles. He started last week. They held, the Chamber of Commerce breakfast was held at the tech school, and they fed 140 people, and it all went very well. There are 10 students, 8 sophomores, 1 junior, and 1 senior going to the FFA National Convention in Indianapolis, where there'll be over 80,000 students in attendance.
Whoa.
There are 180 freshmen that are doing their 5-shop exploratories. And Spirit Week is this week to the 18th. There's a huge football game on the Friday, October 18th. Franklin County Tech is undefeated. They're 5-0, and they're playing against Greenfield, so there's a rivalry. The homecoming dance is the 19th, and they expect about 400 students to attend. There's going to be a flu and COVID shots available on 1025 under the big tent. There's information on the Franklin County Tech website. There are 60 students doing co-ops so far. For the MCAS update, math, science, and ELA, they met or exceeded their target percentage. Advanced coursework, which also includes the co-op work they do, exceeded their target. They do have some areas of need. The 4-year graduation improved, but is still below target. This was an effect from COVID because they did lose some students with the remote learning and all of that. And the same thing with the extended engagement rate. They need to do a better job of retaining students from dropping out, or at least getting them so they can get, it's not called a GED anymore, but still getting a diploma, a high school diploma. And the chronic absenteeism, it's improved, but it's still below the target that was set. They are starting negotiations with the teacher's contract. There'll be 5 meetings between the school committee, the teachers association, and they do have a community representative. It's a very collaborative effort, and no one seems stressed about it. The aviation program, the slab is complete. The hangar door is being prepped, and it should be finished very soon. If you drive by, you'll see this big blue hangar. That's where the aviation shop is going to be. And they're going out to bid for the interior work, and the paving's almost done for it. In the meantime, the exploratory students are using the Turners Falls Airport as their home base because our equipment's over there. The welding trailer is being used both by our students and by the inmates of the Franklin County Housing of Corrections, and it's very popular. This is a collaborative effort, and the goal is to teach inmates skills so they can become productive citizens and not reoffend. And we are moving forward with the potential for a new building. The MSBA design meeting went well. There were 23 companies that did a site visit. 6 submitted bids, 5 were accepted. They're down to 3 designers, and they should have a decision made on October 22nd. After that, then we'll move forward with all that. And I think that's all I've really got, unless you have any questions.
You know how the progress is made on the house they're building over there?
It's coming along. The carpentry students have started their visiting, so they'll keep working on it. They did hire additional staff. I think they have an extra carpentry teacher now, so that they can keep doing it, because you need 2 teachers and then 1 at the shop. So
I go past there daily.
yeah, it's progressing well. They didn't say anything that it wasn't, so they just said they started going back there. So
Looks nice.
yeah.
I just want to give a shout out to the FFA state advisor who is driving at least the state officers to Indianapolis 13 hours in a van.
Oh,
so my son being one of them, I just thought, oh, bless that person. So yeah, it's a great organization.
There was a question that came up at the school committee meeting about who's funding it, and it's a combination of the school. There is some FFA money at the state level, and that, but basically the school is funding the trip. So
It's an amazing program.
yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
So we are up to the Collaborative for Educational Services report.
That is me. So we met on September 25th. They still are doing the hybrid model, so I attended virtually, but they also allow people to attend in person, where they will feed you a nice meal if you choose to go that route. It was the first meeting of the year, so there was a lot of reorganization. So they did election of the board chair, of the vice chair, of the secretary, the treasurer, finance subcommittee, warrant subcommittee, policy subcommittee, authorizing the executive director and deputy director to do their jobs. We approved meeting minutes. We always approve hires and separations for them. Not that we really do that, but they just bring it to our attention when that happens. We went over the process of accepting the finance report ending in August as presented, and then they are now working on preparation for FY24 audit and FY24 audit letter from the company that they use, and I probably would butcher their name, so we'll leave that out. So we did that. We heard about just different programs that they are currently running, and then that was the majority of the meeting. When they do elect kind of the board chair and vice chair and secretary and stuff, they do require them both being from Hampshire County and Franklin County, so that we do have a good representation of both counties, because they are both covered through these meetings. The executive director does type out this really long director's report for each kind of quarter, and so I forwarded you guys one for July through September, and it just talks about they had their 50th anniversary celebration, talks about some of the human resources changes in operations. They kind of broke down their DYS education initiative and different options that they have. They talk about the different special education institutional settings that they have. They have a surrogate parent program, and they also hold a whole early childhood department. So they hold CFCE grants and have team members for that. They do early childhood professional development, early childhood mental health, and workforce development, and then they have an information about their HEC Academy and Mount Tonham Academy. So it's like 3 or 4 pages. So when you have a second and want to read it, it's just really interesting to see all the work that they're doing there at CES. So the next meeting is December 11th at 6 p.m.
Great, thank you. We're still trying to get Dan hooked in, which is why I was up and down. I apologize for that. Regionalization update, I don't see, oh, do you have one? Okay, great.
So it's still working along. There is a meeting tomorrow night, which I hope to attend, about it's the MDAR, I forgot the initials. And then there's a 6-town regionalization meeting on the 29th, which I will be attending. So they're still working towards it, figuring all the issues out. The fact remains it'll still have to go out to vote to the 6 towns, and if it passes, then we'll have to have the discussion of what we do with us.
Have we ever gotten more information on like what it means for the contract, what it means for us?
Yes.
Okay.
So I broached that question at a Gil Montague meeting last year, and they talked with legal counsel, and they're not. So we have a 5-year. 5 years before if we agree to, not send our kids there anyways, it's a 5-year withdrawing period. That's what's in the contract. So they're aware of that. What they are thinking is that we would keep tuitioning them, our students, as we do, and we would rework a new contract. Now, whether or not that changes what's in our old contract, that's for you and the townspeople. But they are now aware that it's not as simple as they thought it was, which they would just keep tuitioning students in like they do over at Pioneer with the Vermont kids. It's different. We have a contract, and it would null the contract if it became a different if it became the 6-town regionalization. So they're aware.
Thank you for that.
All right, Capital Planning Committee, do you have an update? Is there an update?
There is.
Okay.
trying to make sure I had right dates. Okay, so we met on Thursday, October 11th, and we talked about, we got an update regarding the blinds. We had a conversation around, yes, we still want to do the blinds, and some might be of real safety concern. So Caitlin is going to work with Eric and do a walk around of the building to see, because when they did their most recent emergency drill, there was one definitely that wouldn't even go down, and so that was just, raised as a concern. So they're gonna walk around the building, see how many are more of like a safety concern, not a cosmetic thing, or not, I wish it worked a little different, it's like a true safety concern. And then we will look at how many that is, see if that's something we are able, which I think, Caitlin, you said you feel confident that we could, do you have another update?
Yes, so I met with Eric today, we did walk
Perfect.
around. There's much more that are of immediate concern than we had sort of projected, because there's many windows to the in the interior of classrooms that don't have blinds at all. So if you're walking around, if you had a lockdown drill, there's no blinds to shut the window that goes from the hallway into the classrooms. So we have a number of immediate concerns.
Okay. So we're working on that to try to figure out what that means and what it means to replace the whole building. So we're kind of back figuring that out, but prioritizing it to be able to have everything ready to submit to the town when they ask for that information. So that's the blinds. Then we also discussed, Brian brought a ton of paperwork for us to look at regarding the roof and HVAC project. Basically, we are looking at a project that is going to be over, or we are being, seeing that it's probably most likely going to be over 1.5 million. And because of that, that triggers a requirement for us to hire an OPM, and that's like state, regulations. And so we want to assume that it's going to be over the 1.5 because we do think it's going to be, but even if it's close, we'd rather cover all of our bases than like hope and wish for the best. So what we are, as a capital planning, Brian gave us information from other projects around the state and what OPMs have cost and what designers have costs. And so at our next meeting, we're going to come back and decide on a number that we feel comfortable that would fulfill that need of hiring an OPM and a designer, and bringing that back to the full committee to then vote on whether they support that or not, to be able to then move it forward to the town to add it in the queue of capital projects. So Shannon and Brian are also working on contacting MSBA to get guidance, and we're looking at other funding sources to make sure that if we are able to apply, which we're gonna, try to do all of that, we are following the right processes that and procedures that they're going to want to see and require. And so MSBA is one of them. And that is kind of all of the real updates. We kind of went over what the policies and procedures are. So we have to hire an OPM first, then we have to hire an initial designer, and then those people are the ones that go through the building, and then we can kind of share with them, okay, we want to see what it looks like if we replace our system as is but newer. And we also want to see it partially electrified, or we want to see the whole, all, so we give them what we want to see and what we want to fix and what our ideas are, and then they are the ones that are going to check for structural issues, or, what we have the capacity to do, if we have limitations, if they're suggesting one way or another, and so that would be on them to get those answers. So that's kind of all we have right now, but I feel like we're headed in the right direction. We're keeping the town very aware and in that loop of conversation. I think from the information that Brian shared, we do have a good estimate on what we'll kind of think about as a group to be able to say, yes, this will cover all of our needs. And I really appreciate Brian's thought process and guidance and knowledge around how we can make sure that if we were to do this project, that we do it in our best interest and not in the best interest of these designers or these, people that they're gonna build us this best thing because they're gonna get the most money out of it. Like, no, he knows kind of those ways to word things and information that it can be like, okay, we can only do up to this amount or, that. So we do wanna be really intentional about it and fiscally responsible while we're working on this as well.
Seems we're making some headway.
We're getting there.
Excellent.
There will be some decision times coming up in, that stuff has to move forward to the town in December, probably right early in December for the town finance committee. And we have a meeting in
November.
Early in November.
Of course I didn't write it down, but.
It's on my calendar, but I
Yeah,
haven't done it right
so we have planning to meet again before the next school committee meeting, so that way on the agenda for the next school committee meeting, we can have that vote of whether it's supported or not to move it to the town and put the request in.
Perfect. Okay. So a potential vote will be added to our agenda for next month. Okay.
That may be, there may votes on the roof and HVAC systems, or maybe a separate vote on the blinds as a separate thing. There'll definitely be two different questions.
Okay. One thing I just want to mention about the blinds, I know for these windows here, we have the, that like mirrored effect on the outside. And I'm wondering if that could be something that could be looked at for those interior windows, that are an issue. Because then it's not something that another thing that somebody's got to pull down.
I think aren't some of the interior ones have this film on them?
Some have one of those, like the plastic up that has a design or has something so you can't see inside that specific window, but we'd be looking to put blinds into them.
I mean, some of those windows are just such an odd shape that I suspect that one, it's going to be very expensive, but two, that's requiring a person to do another step during an emergency. If we had them mirrored or the film that you can't see through, that takes away an extra step for an adult to be doing, in the middle of an emergency situation. So just something to think about.
I appreciate that feedback.
All right, so we are up to the superintendent's report.
All right, it's a little bit long, so I will try to be as entertaining as I can. And some of these things are also on the principal's report, so I'm going to try to consolidate them a little bit. On October 18th, the entire Union 28 will engage in Professional Development Day, known as Curriculum Day. The day will be hosted at Swift River School and will feature keynote speaker Dr. Stuart Ablon. Dr. Albon is a leading expert in trauma-informed practices. He is going to be providing the keynote address and also leading small group rotation work. So we're pretty excited about that. We have completed the first round of instructional walkthroughs in each school. During a walkthrough, an observation team consisting of the principal of the building, Director of Student Support, Amy Langdon, Director of Curriculum, Lindsay Rodriguez, and myself observe classrooms for approximately 15 minutes and look for indicators consistent with high-quality instructional practices. The focus is on instructional trends within each of our buildings and is not used as part of the teacher evaluation process. Union 28 has applied for and received a 3-year waiver for our joint Special Education Parent Advisory Council, known as CPAC. The state mandates require that each district in the Commonwealth have a CPAC organization to advise and collaborate on issues involving special education. The waiver allows the union to form one CPAC group that serves all 4 union schools. Amy Langdon is currently trying to build this network. She has reached out to families, all families of students who are serviced with an IEP received a letter. She has attended all of the open houses. She has posted on school and community pages. She currently has 10 families who have expressed an interest in becoming active members, and she has surveyed them for the best meeting times, and locations will rotate through various schools. The Erving preschool playgroup was held at the Erving Library, and it meets on Mondays, and it is the largest CNC playgroup in the Union right now. There are 19 children, and there were 30 total people when their adults were with them. They are also starting the Sunday group here in the gym from 10 to 11:30. There's no registration. It's on a drop-in basis. The CNC group is also currently working, they have a story walk behind the library that is available to all students and families. The leadership team has met with the Franklin County Sheriff's Department to schedule all our school safety drills. EES will conduct 3 safety drills throughout the school year, and the first drill will be in November, and it will be an announced drill. Our Bright program is up and operating in 2 schools, including Erving Elementary. Currently, 4 students at Erving Elementary are enrolled in the program, and a 5th will complete the intake process and begin accessing the program next week. The capacity is 5 students, so it'll be running at full capacity by the end of next week. The Bright staff have attended the new program training and a workshop in September. Bright staff have been consulting with classroom teachers and other service providers on a weekly basis, collaborating daily with classroom teachers to make sure student schedules are aligned. They have bi-weekly meetings with Bright for their consultation. And our Bright point person, Zamora, will be conducting an informational workshop for all staff on October 23rd. The program is new, and it's hard to measure if it is successful because we don't have a lot, we're only 5 weeks, 6 weeks into school. But our calls in this building to our response team at midpoint of October in 2023, there had been 68 calls for a dysregulated student that required our in-building emergency team to respond. And to this point, as of last Friday, there have only been 6 calls. That just is an indicator that some of the students who were struggling and requiring a lot of assistance are within the program and getting their needs met. So it's not indicating that there's no struggles, but that they're in a setting where they're able to get those needs met with fewer disruptions to the whole building. With 3 collective bargaining contracts to expire this year, we have made a union purchase of the LIDEX program to allow a streamlined process and access over 200 contracts and contract language from other Commonwealth districts. This program was recommended through Caitlin Sheridan with her feedback from her counterparts in other area districts. We purchased a 3-year contract for $3,500, which was divided by the union schools. Erving Elementary held their annual fall open house. It was incredibly well attended. It was a great chance to see the extended EES community and visit classrooms. Principal Crane attended, Director of Student Support Services Amy Langdon attended, and I attended. Some upcoming events on my schedule for the remainder of the year, I wish, for the remainder of the month. I attended the Erving All Departments meeting today. I have the Franklin County Superintendent's Roundtable coming up later in October. I have a Mass Commissioner of Education Superintendent webinar. There is an event that all school committees were invited to at Mahar for Chapter 70 funding event. And there are 2 safety training events. Enhancing School Safety, which is an online training through DESE and the Federal Department of Education, and a tabletop exercise with our Frontier Regional Group of FRCOG, and it's the local municipalities. And that will be this Thursday in Greenfield. And Tom Smith from Erving will be attending with me, as well as the tech person from Shutesbury. So that's what I have, and then I have our MCAS presentation as part of that. So I'm going to...
How
Sure.
about we pause and just ask questions about this?
Sure,
And then
okay.
we'll launch into the next part of it.
All
okay?
right.
So I have a wonder and a question.
Okay.
So about the Bright program, well, maybe a wonder and a question about the Bright program.
Okay.
I wonder, when you said that the calls were down, that's wonderful, but are the students that were having such struggles last year still here? Or have some of those students graduated so that it's a bit of a skewed picture when you look at the reduction in calls?
That is a great question. I know that 3 of the students, all the students in Bright were here last year. However, I don't know how many of those 68 calls were from 6th graders or students who have moved. So that's a great question, and I can get more follow-up.
And then, thank you. And then I do wonder, I guess it was 2 wonders, not a question. I do wonder how we are going to measure success with this program, because at some point we're going to have to decide if we want to invest in this program as a school, entering it into our budget. So I would, and we talked quite a bit about this last year when we were thinking about this program, was that there had to be some way to measure whether this was successful or not. So I see number of calls as possibly one data point, but what other data points are we going to use to decide success? And is 5 being the cap, 5 a decision for Erving, or is this a Bright program decision that they only ever take 5?
So I think that was the agreed upon amount that we would use for the rollout, but I can clarify that because I was here, but not really here in the spring. They do have some suggested measures. So if the committee would like, because I do think it's something we should be revisiting and talking about, I can perhaps add it to November or December to get an update, and also what some of those measures are that we're tracking.
Yeah, I would like to see this, maybe not every month, but at least every 2 months or so. Again, because it's new to our district, and because, again, at some point we're going to have to decide if we're going to carry on this project without the grant funding. Especially, is there some sort of metrics for the students' educational needs?
So I'm sure you can measure time that the student is in the classroom, but I think what's important to remember is the bigger impact in the school. So when you have 68 calls for safety care trained staff to leave their classroom, that is impacting the instruction going on in other classrooms, right? If their teacher's on a response, they have to leave what they're doing. So that time lost instructionally is probably going to be harder to gauge, but I think we should have some measure, because that's really when you talk about a culture of a building or the impact of this program on students who maybe not directly serviced, but how is that keeping disruptions at a minimum and keeping classroom instruction as uninterrupted as possible. So.
And I think that's, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off at the end there. I think that's a really good distinction to make too, because so we want obviously those 5 students to be better able to access their education, but we also want everyone else to better be able to access their education. So I definitely agree that that's a good data point. I'm just wondering what else we can use. And then
Can I just,
oh, sure.
just because I pulled up the slideshow from last year. So it says Tier 3 Bright intervention will cap its active enrollment at 5 students at any given time, receiving intensive, comprehensive wraparound supports, and the room will support an additional number of students with Tier 2 needs, up to 10 students, as capacity allows in relationship to existing levels and range and need in the room. So.
And I know right now there is 1 student who is accessing it for intervention. So they're not one of the 5, but they do access the room.
Great, thank you. And then just on the, how do you say it, Lytics?
Lytics, I think.
Lytics.
I pronounce it differently every time I say it.
Whatever that is. I'm just curious, what do they provide? Because contracts are public record, so anybody can access the record. So what is this company for $3,500 doing for us that we can't already do?
So I think, one, it's going to save a tremendous amount of time when you look at the time it takes when you're in a negotiation meeting and someone says, well, in Greenfield, they're getting a COLA of 2% or 3%. It has a dashboard that is customized to us. Caitlin, I know you've spent more time, so I don't want to throw you under the bus to answer, but if you want to jump in, feel free.
Sure. So it gives us comparables to regional, to districts that we have in our area. So it'll kind of rank us and it'll look at where we compare at every step, every column across the contract. It gives information about, for some of the schools that have districts that have received higher COLAs, they'll go through the contract and pick out exactly which things led to those. So a school that had a 4.5% COLA, say, but then they actually added 15 minutes to their school day. So that information is really quick to be able to compare. It also does projections for the budget. So if you wanted to compare, say, 3% over each year for 3 years versus 2, 3, 4, it'll tell you, because I've already put all the information on where and everyone's step and where they are. It'll give us the exact amount of the financial impact from one scenario to the other.
So is this software that is going to be accessible to the school committee? How?
You'll have a login, and it will allow you, so when you're in the contract negotiations, you'll be able to pull that up. You'll be able to see it sorts all the information, so you can see where Erving stands on different contract pieces compared to other surrounding schools. Caitlin had brought it to the table and said it had been really endorsed at the MASPO level, and since that time in the superintendent's roundtable, they're all talking about how it takes the personal nature out, because it's not, I'm coming in and sharing with you, this is what we're offering. It really allows you to look at it and be able to pull it up. And so they have really, the superintendents who have been a part of using it have endorsed it.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. I think then that lends itself to a different conversation, which is we may need to have then school-issued computers, because to expect that we're all going to have our personal computers able to access that software. So if we are going to move in that direction of having more software supporting our work here, then we need to have that conversation of supplying technology.
We could certainly have that. I think also when you're in those negotiations, that depending on what the format is, you can have it as a shared screen so people can look up and whatever people are more comfortable with. But if Caitlin is in the negotiation or another school part, you'll be able to have a shared screen and be able to look up if you don't want to log in yourself.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Something to think about as we move along.
Any other questions before I move into MCAS?
I just had a question about, because it wasn't listed here, the interim principal search, if you had any updates or processes or anything like that.
And I apologize for not having that on there. So the posting closed today. We do have viable candidates. I think that we were at 8 fully licensed candidates that had applied. Wow. I have asked Ann McGill, who is the principal at Shutesbury, to facilitate, she'll be a non-voting member, but just to facilitate the search process. We sent out and asked for different stakeholder groups from the, we have a Unit A, a Unit B, we've asked the teacher in charge. There's a central office person. We put it in the parent newsletter. We did not get a parent who responded yet, but Pat did put it in the newsletter. They will meet on Thursday, and Mark is on representing the school committee. They will meet on Thursday to develop their questions, sort through the 8, and do they want to interview them all? What does that look like? And then they will do their confidentiality agreement. And I believe the 22nd is when you're scheduled for interviews, Mark?
Yeah, and the email said the meeting would be at 8:30.
In the morning?
It didn't say, it just said 8:30.
I can assure you it's in the morning. But I will make sure she clarifies that. But yes, so it's going pretty quickly. I mean, I think it's as timely as we can have it. To be honest, I had extended it until the 15th because I was really nervous we would not get a lot of applicants, especially after having gone through the search in Leverett this summer, and we didn't have as many applicants, and that was summertime. So I'm pleasantly surprised. The committee will move 2 to 3 finalists onto the superintendent. That's their charge.
Is there still time then for a parent to get onto the board?
Yep.
Okay, and just because we're on camera, tell them what they need to do.
So
what is
they
the
will,
process?
so it's in the newsletter, but they will contact Pat Wynn at the office and express their interest, and she'll get their information, and Ann McGill from Shutesbury will reach out to them.
Great, thank you.
It wasn't in the newsletter on Friday. It was in the October 4th newsletter. So it might not hurt to be put out as a class dojo on its own, because I think sometimes those get a little more traction because the newsletter, they have to click the link to go in and then read it, where the class dojo just kind of like pops up if it's put on the feed. So that might be a thing, because I didn't even remember seeing it. I had to go back and look, and I try to read them every week. So might not hurt to put that in.
Do you think you'll be able to do that before Thursday?
I can send a message,
Yeah, okay, perfect. I think it's really important that we have,
And in all
that
honesty,
stakeholder
even if they
representative.
miss the initial, they can meet up with Ann, and other than not having a voice about who gets interviewed, they could sign the confidentiality, and as long as we can have someone by the 22nd, then their voice would
Yeah.
still be heard.
Okay, wonderful. And I just have one more thing too before you go into MCAS. The school improvement plan, when will we see that?
So I am meeting with the leadership team. We're just working on our goals, and then they're going to use that to drive, and we just received the MCAS data a couple weeks ago. So I would expect you would receive it in November is my hope, but certainly no later than December.
Okay. And we have a school council in place to pass it through them as well?
There is a school, I saw the postings go out. I know that they were still looking for some additional members to keep that balance. But yes, I know that that was out, and I know there was a sign up at open house.
I have a little bit of an update on that. Because it's the first time in like 6 years that there actually has to be some kind of vote. And then that's put on the parent organization connected to the school, which then falls on Pi. So there were 5, I believe, parents that were interested. They were asked to write a blurb to kind of say why they were interested. And then that was, to my knowledge, supposed to be shared with the parents at some point. I haven't seen anything come through. And I just like double checked the newsletter again. But I know they had asked the parents to put a blurb together. Then the voting would happen, and it would kind of go in order of what out of the 5. So like you would have a 1, a 2, 3, 4, 5. And the hopes is that they would have to find enough staff members. So the last I knew, there were no staff that were interested in being on the policy or the school council. And so that's why they had to have this voting, so that if they are able to get at least 1 staff member wanting to be on it, then they would go with that 1 parent member that was voted first. And then if they're able to get 2, they would go with 2 and kind of go down that way. But as the last I knew, which was like 2 weeks ago, or a week and a half ago, so things could have changed. There were no staff members that were interested in being on the council
I will follow up with Principal
or
Green.
available to be on it. Not that they weren't interested, but it just didn't work out.
Can I interrupt before? I know you're going to be speaking, but I'm passing a lot of parents may want to watch, and I've gotten some reports that the feed hasn't been working since Jackie was speaking. So I just didn't want parents to miss that.
Thank you.
Dan, are you able to hear us?
We're not able to hear you.
Okay, we can't hear you, Dan, if you're talking to us. Is the volume up on this TV before we go too much further in the tech
You can
world?
hear us.
Yeah, you can hear us, great. I'm glad you can hear us. Oh, there,
Oh, there we go, a little bit.
Okay, all right, we're gonna muddle through. Okay, I think we're ready for MCAS now.
Oh, now I feel like I have to take a breath. All right, now this will be the real trick. I should be able to share?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay,
Okay, I hear you very well.
excellent.
Oh. Are you sharing it to the TV?
I'm
or to
sharing it to the Google Meet.
Okay, not seeing it.
Did you have the source for HMDI or whatever, or did you have it?
No, yeah, it's complicated because he's also being routed to the TV. So, I'm logged into the meeting and
Can you see Mike?
Caitlin is
Yep.
live.
Okay, so let's see. I'm gonna share my screen again. Can you see it now?
I think it's starting to load. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, 1 second.
All
Let's see
right.
back here. Come on.
See, I don't know if that's better, seeing myself in live time or rewatching it when I rewatch it.
Technology today.
Tanya.
Oh, there we are.
The best laid plans, right?
We can always.
Ah,
Okay.
yay.
Oh,
Yay, all right,
Don't
here we
touch
go.
it.
All right, nobody blink.
It's like the Christmas lights.
yeah.
All right, let's see if I can get this. All right, we're going. All right. So the state accountability that's released every year came out, and I'm going to give you a little rundown of how, first, for those who don't know, how we get an accountability rating, and then how Erving performed in 2024. So districts and schools each get a rating. We're kind of in a unique position because our school is our district. But districts generally get an overall classification that is I'm afraid to even move, a combination of how all of their schools do towards their progress towards their targets. Schools get an accountability rating that is a numerical rating, and it's based on a normative reference point comparing their progress to other schools that service the same grade span as them. And then also a criterion referenced component where it looks at their goals for their school and their progress over a 2-year window. So because we don't have high school in our district, we have sort of 3 big pockets of where we get those numbers. One is our achievement in math, science, and ELA. The other is our growth factors. And then the third is what is our chronic absenteeism rate at our school? And that is students, what percentage of our students miss more than 10% of the school year due to absence? So those are sort of the 3 big pockets. And you get a report card. And it looks like this. I'd like to blow it up, but I'm afraid to do anything. But I'm going to try to see if this works a little bit. So it's a little bit blurry. I'm not sure why, but we'll go with it. So our overall classification for our district and our school is substantial progress towards meeting our targets that they've set for us. There are some pockets. The blue, which is kind of hard to read, is achievement. So you can earn 8 possible points. We have earned 5 of 8. We earned 3 of 4 in ELA and 2 of 4 in math. Then we have growth. How did our students how did they do in their subject areas compared to their previous scores? So obviously 3rd grade, there's no growth factor, but in 4th, 5th, and 6th, you have that growth factor. And again, we had an overall rating of 5 out of 8. And so the weight for that achievement, that score is worth 67.5% of our total overall rating. And then growth is worth 22.5%. So those are the 2 really big pockets. And then we have chronic absenteeism, that gray at the bottom, which is very blurry. I'm not sure why. It's not blurry on my version, but is additional indicators. And because we're an elementary school, we don't have advanced coursework, we don't have those type of things, but we do have our attendance rate. And we earned 4 out of 4 possible points, and that is worth 10%. So that gave us an overall accountability rating of 31. So on a scale sort of 0 to 99, we're at a 31. So what does that mean compared to how are the rest of the state doing? So my next graph here shows us, the blue is the state. So this is a lumped score by subject area. So the top one is 493, we're in orange, that was our average score for ELA, and we're right at the state average. So in the state of Massachusetts was an average of 493. So listen, we want to be better than average, but we're gonna take this as, you know, we're meeting the state average. In math, we're at a 489, and the state average is 495. So we're a little bit below the average, but we're within that 10 points, which statistically, they say that if you have intentional targeted programming, you can grow in any content area, that it's reasonable to expect between 5 and 10-point growth. And in science and technology, we were at a 490, and the state average is 494. So what does that look like in the overall scheme of things? So I really got into a data dive because this is all new to me. So I'm looking, what has Erving been doing, you know, historically? So there are some wins here. Amidst all of the movement that was happening last year, there are some wins. Achievement and growth in math increased, which really says something about making up some ground, because that still was where we were the furthest from the state from our assessments. But there's been some achievement and growth from last year's scores. Your chronic absenteeism here went from, we earned 2 out of 4 points last year to 4 out of 4. So that's a huge win. If kids are present, scores are going to go up because they're missing less instruction. The accountability rating for Erving is the highest that it's been since 2018. So that is a win. Hovering somewhere with like 26, 27, 28, but the highest it has been since 2018. And the ELA scores have remained consistent. So that's sort of, has not been a dip there. So those are some things, listen, there's work to do. I'm not going to try to sugarcoat it. We want to be above average, but there are certainly some winning points to work with. So now what? Some of the steps that are going to be, and keep in mind, you know, we're just starting that dive into, I know Principal Crane has been meeting with different people, and I know Lindsay Rodriguez is meeting with people, and Amy, to look at how certain subgroups are doing and what our next steps are. But we're going to dive into analysis, action planning, and then communication and stakeholder engagement. So in the pockets, analysis, we're going to start looking at what role does school climate, when we talk about attendance and all of those things, what role does school climate have, and are we making that work for us? We're going to look at not just MCAS data, but other assessments that we have, benchmark assessments, common formative assessments, unit assessments, and seeing how those all align. We're taking a look at when we really start looking in the weeds of the work, is our curriculum supporting us Or are there pockets where we have to consider if our curriculum is the best curriculum, or does it need to be supplemented for certain pieces? For example, we're going to be talking about writing. We've been talking about that because that's been where we have in that ELA pocket. We're kind of further there, and so we're already have planned some PD that is specific to writing so that we can improve our instruction in writing so that our students can have better outcomes. And we're going to look at the impact of social emotional learning. Are our students ready and in learning environments where they're able to access the work, and that the classrooms as a whole can access the work? A little bit to what we spoke about before. Are there disruptions to the learning that we can control? We're going to identify where our strengths are and where our areas are for improvement, and we're going to focus on some short-term and long-term needs when we're planning, because this is not right? MCAS isn't going away, and so we need to have a comprehensive plan about what are we going to do to improve these scores, not just to meet the state average, but to exceed it over time, and set some goals around that. And then we're going to focus on communication and stakeholder, talking with our families, sharing this information with families. When we talk about the importance of school attendance and all of those things, that all plays into that. And we're going to do curriculum work and staff development around the areas that need the most support, and look at how our wraparound supports programs like Bright, can enhance our attendance and keep classroom disruptions to a minimum so that learning can happen for all students. So that's sort of our where we are and our game plan. This will be something we revisit when I do instructional updates, or the incoming principal does as part of their principal report instructional updates. But this is sort of the roadmap for where we're going. And then I just have comments or questions. I think I've gone through. I can exit out. Okay.
Yeah, it looks pretty.
She asks delicately.
I'm afraid to touch anything. I'm sorry.
We just need Dan back.
Yeah, we need Dan.
There we go. All right, there we go.
Nope. Oh, there he is.
There he is. So I'm happy for any questions or comments or feedback or.
Well, just a quick one so that I might be able to look more carefully at things. Again, can we get that sent to us?
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that the MCAS scores, when they talk about absenteeism, they don't differentiate between being sick and you're absent, or you
They don't.
went
You
on
have
vacation and you're
18
absent.
days.
Absent is absent. So
Absent is
and
absent.
Right, 10% of the year is 18 days. I mean, that's a significant number of
3.5
days out.
weeks.
Yeah.
3.5 weeks.
Yeah.
Yes, and so they will note, when we have excused attendance, now they do note it, but for accountability purposes,
Yeah.
there's no break.
All right. I know.
Are there any other areas where there are, I don't know, weird things to the way the information is collected? As you were just saying about attendance, are there other odd pieces that, skew the information one way or another?
I think, to be honest, because we don't have a lot of that when there was that gray part which says like additional factors, because we don't have secondary, we don't have some of those things that are a little bit more ambiguous, like advanced coursework or high school graduation rate, right? We don't have any of those. It's really our testing scores. We will get, they call it vocal data, which is that school climate. They ask students 4th grade and about how do you feel about school, and what is school like for you, but it doesn't factor into that number. It's feedback for the district.
Have these MCAS scores gone home yet?
I believe they were dropped off here last week, so I believe they went home last Friday, but that was my understanding, is that they were going home last Friday.
Okay. Dan, were you trying to ask a question? We can't hear you.
I think it's delayed. We might hear him in a second.
Dan, we can't hear you. I don't know if you're muted or we just are having tech problems on our end.
Me and a lip reader.
No.
I can't hear.
You can always add it in the chat and someone can read it.
Yep, add it in the chat, or honestly, yeah, I was gonna say you could text it to me too. We're just trying to make it accessible.
And I know in the past, we've also just been able to see kind of how the other schools in the district scored as well. Where I think that would just be interesting, not necessarily to compare, but just to kind of see now that we are starting to streamline some of those leadership roles and having that consistency across the district, what that looks like too.
If you give me 2 minutes, I can
Oh,
give you a
yeah,
rough,
no,
a
you
rough,
can whenever you
you're
get a
middle of
chance.
the pack. I don't know if, I believe you're, I don't know if you're 2 or 3. I know you're not 1 and I know you're not 4. So I've identified those. Just because I believe in giving praise where it's due. Shutesbury got a school of distinction this year.
Oh, awesome.
So, you know, kudos to them. So I know that they're 1 and you are not 4. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate it. And like I said, it's interesting
But it
to
lets
see.
you see.
But
You-
even
you
within
did have
that,
growth, though.
How are our ELA scores compared? How are our math scores? I mean, overall, you're giving us an answer, but
we,
you know,
we
even
are
within
looking at that because when we talk about because we're not a region and we are trying to streamline some things, it's one of the things Lindsay and I have been talking into. Some schools have the same curriculum and some don't. Are we seeing, that's a real case for if the schools are having one curriculum and in ELA and are doing much better, then we need to look at how big a piece is curriculum out of that. All of our schools do have what is considered high quality curriculum. It meets the benchmark for DESE, but some are more user friendly than others. So it's one of the things that you saw that blurb about what are we looking at when we talk about curriculum, we're looking at the curriculum as a whole and in pieces, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of different variables when
Listen, this is
comparing
a
schools.
rabbit
So
hole.
it's you know, there's environment, there's schedules, there's child groupings, there's class sizes. Like there's so much to consider. So
And when you are a small school, not that cohorts aren't always important, but when you're a small school and there's limited ability to mix up a cohort, that can certainly be impactful.
Yeah.
So we're looking at all those variables. This is where we're at, having the data for, a few weeks. But, there were definitely some things to build on, for sure.
awesome.
And I will share that with all of you.
Thank you.
And I would just like to share, because we were having tech problems with Dan, he just said that he's lost the connection, but he's pleased to hear that you are not satisfied with being average, so that's great. Are the numbers for EES or Union, so he's asking about the numbers, are they just Erving's or are they Union 28 wide? So these were just Erving
These are
numbers.
just Erving's.
And he's gonna try and get his connection restored. So this is,
I just have a
is tricky.
quick backtrack question that I meant to ask earlier and I forgot. When we're talking about CPAC, and thank you for adding that additional information, that was super helpful. Can other families who have children with a 504 or other identified areas be a part of that, and will they be reached out? Because it seems like only the families that have IEPs were reached out to. So I just wasn't sure if you're trying to start somewhere and then build, or how that works.
So I think the practice is that a letter went home specifically to students who we identified that they're receiving some sort of IEP service, but trying to get a wider range because those issues can be impactful for anyone in the school. That's why she attended open houses to reach out to a larger base of families. So I'm I think she would welcome any participation, but the requirement is that we have so many, so that's why she was targeting, that we have made an effort to connect with families whose children are serviced by an IEP.
Okay.
But it's not limited to that.
Okay.
But it
Yeah,
has
I
to-
think just
but it has
sometimes
to
there's
include
some
that.
families that wonder like, oh, can I attend? Can I be a part? Should I be, so it was just more of a clarification question if those numbers are really held to that IEP standard, and then if they are getting others, they can join, but that's not in your target numbers as far as what you're supposed
Right.
to have.
I think right now we're targeting families whose students are serviced because that's the benchmark. And so the 10 that we have are families who responded through the letter that they
Right.
received. But other parents can certainly join that group and learn about their work and support their work.
Could you offer that, or maybe I would like to offer that as a piece of feedback for whatever the next information presentation is on this, to include, hey, even if you have a 504, or even if you have just a wondering about it, come join us, because I wonder if maybe the perception is that they can't. And so we want to make sure it's clear.
I can have her write a little blob and
I know that's
blurb
been
and
worked on, like
in
to
the
try to
weekends.
build that up, so it would be nice if we're able to have,
Now,
Yeah.
we're still jumping around here, but then back to this. When you said 10 families, that's from the entire district?
That's from the entire union.
Yeah, so possibly having others with like the 504s or maybe other concerns that haven't been identified in IEP might also help draw in others that do have. Sometimes you come with your friend.
I will share that feedback, suggestion.
All right, how do we feel?
Okay.
I don't have any more questions right now.
Thank you, that was
Time to move on.
really helpful, a lot of information, but very worthwhile.
Yes, no, super helpful. Visuals are always good too, so thank you for that.
And it looks like we got Dan back, so yay!
Hey, Dan.
On to the Director of Finance and Operations.
So will I be able to project? Is there a way for me to
Do you know how to just override? Is there a wireless way?
I don't know. The other option is that I've already sent you the document, so I can have you look at the document while I go over the end of the year report. It just won't be.
What document is it that you're talking about?
It's in the packet.
You can try to share like this tangent.
Okay, how do I do that?
Are you in the?
I'm in the Google Meet that she was in. Will that?
Yeah.
Allow me to do
Share
it?
it inside there. I don't know where it is.
The little arrow, the box with the arrow, click that. Yep, there you go.
Give me a second.
Oh, yours was way quicker than mine.
What information is it that you want us to be looking at?
So this is the end of year report for FY24. So this
Okay.
is what you will have a vote on. So the chair is able to sign the certification statement for the end of year report. This report needs to be submitted to DESI every year. It's typically due at the end of September. The date this year was September 30th. It was submitted on the 27th. So the big tab at the bottom, EOY, end of year 24. This breaks down, at the top portion is Schedule 1, revenue and expenditure summary. These are revenues from local sources to cover preschool tuition. I don't know, I'm trying to find it. School aid, Chapter 70.
Are you trying to find this document? Go to her email.
Charter tuition reimbursement. Some of these are auto-fills and auto-filled in by the state, and the ones in blue.
It's just coming from state information. DESI administered grants, and school lunch receipts. And then Schedule 1 revenue expenditure summary. These are expenditures by the school committee. So the school committee, superintendent, if we had assistant superintendent, other district-wide administration, business and finance, legal services, legal settlements, curriculum directors and department heads. And for some of these categories are broken down by special education, in, well, let me go back to the top. So the regular day versus special education. Regular day is the first column, special education the second. Other ones like superintendent, that's in the undistributed category. So curriculum directors and department heads, and supervisory and non-supervisory. Instructional technology, school leadership building, so that's the principal, clerical, and what it takes to run the main office.
You see it?
Teachers, regular day and special education. Medical therapeutic services. Long-term subs, short-term subs. Non-clerical paraprofessionals, instructional assistants. Librarians and media center directors. Distance learning and online coursework. Other professional development. Instructional materials. These are all the instructional categories of the end of year report. Testing and assessment. Psychological services.
Not Dan.
Medical health services, and all of these ones in this this group of these are all expenditures out of our local funds. So this section does not include grants, it doesn't include revolving funds, and it doesn't include expenditures by the town. Transportation services. So you'll see like food service, there's nothing there because we didn't transfer any money from the local account, and all of food service expenditures came from salary, and for food supplies, any accounts payable came from the revolving fund.
Caitlin, can I ask you, like, do you want me to wait to the end, or because I have a question. You want me to wait? Okay, like, for instance, transportation services. So that is simply, that contracted services is both Cosmescus, the general transportation, and our out-of-district transportation?
Yep, they're separated into regular day and special education.
And so because we run our own van, that would be included somewhere else?
Well, we didn't start running our own van until FY25. So this is just FY24.
Oh, okay, okay.
But good
Gotcha.
question.
Thanks.
Other student activities, custodial services, now it gets into all the building, custodial services for salaries, supplies, equipment, heating a building, utility services, maintenance of grounds, maintenance of buildings, maintenance of equipment, technology. And so you'll see like employer retirement contributions, there's nothing there. It's not that the school doesn't have any, it's that those are expenditures on the town level, not the school level, and we're still in the section that is under the school budget. Some insurances we do have for the school.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
Just so I am understanding it right. Under psychological services, you don't have to go way back, but it's saying professional salaries, $1,800, and it's not listing anything else. Is that because those were some of those roles that were covered under the ESSER funds?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just trying to.
I know typically it wouldn't be so small,
Yeah.
but they're mainly
I'm like, was that a
covered under ESSER.
contracted thing? But
Yeah.
no, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
No problem. And then payments to other districts. Again, the blue ones are auto-filled, so tuition to Mass Public Schools, tuition to non-public schools, and Schedule 1 revenue expenditure summary. These are the expenditures by the town. So now we're looking at the town's budget. School committee stipends. There's not much for this. Well, the parts that they have, the cells that are filled in are big because they cover our benefits and our retirement contributions, and then school committee stipends, and then insurances for active employees, insurance for retired, and then payments to other districts. This is where, so if the town is paying school choice tuition to other districts, this is auto-populated in there because this is the amount that they pay and that we know that they've paid on their cherry sheet. Schedule 1 revenue expenditure summary for expenditures from federal grants, state grants, and special funds. These are all the amounts, and it goes over between Title I, IDEA, other DESE administered grants, circuit breaker, private and grants, school choice and other day tuition, athletic funds, school nutrition, other local receipts. So this is where every expenditure we make out of a grant gets filtered into, I am the filter. I have to take them all together and then put them exactly where they need to go.
And why do we have something listed under insurance for active employees?
Because when we have a grant-funded position, the part of the grant has to cover part of their insurance, so we pay that amount directly to the town to help cover the cost of insurance for a grant-funded position. Schedule 2, this is if we were a regional school district. We're not, so that was an easy part to do on this. Schedule 3, instructional expenditures. Now this is, I'm going to go kind of quickly because it's really just a collapsed amount of all the instructional expenditures from all the sources. So it's kind of a combination of everything that we've kind of looked through already. Then Schedule 3, instructional expenditures from grants and other funding. Again, Schedule 4, special education expenditures by placement. This is where it gets a little tricky because you have to break down what special education expenditures were for ages 3 through 5, so which ones fall under the preschool and which ones fall under kindergarten through 6th grade. Payments to other districts. Those would be our out-of-district placements. Pupil transportation reimbursement. So this is where we say how many students. Erving is kind of interesting in that roughly half of the students live within 1.5 miles of the school. So we only receive reimbursement for ones that are over 1.5 miles, but we are in a location that it would be very difficult for most of the students that are still within 1.5 miles to be able to walk to school safely and easily. So I know my daughter lived and her dad's 1.4 miles up the road, but she would have to walk a chunk of that on Route 2. So I'm grateful that we still provide transportation to students even if they aren't reimbursable. Special education, transportation, vocational, we don't have it. Schedule 7, pupil transportation reimbursements. And then here's where we've looked at everything we've spent for FY24. This is everything we have budgeted for FY25. So now we're going to tell the state what it is we have budgeted for this year so that next year they'll have that to compare to what we did spend at FY25. Well, they're able to compare what we budgeted and what we actually did spend. So I took the FY25 budget, and at least there's far fewer lines that you have to fill in. It's a collapsing of, what are all of our instruction. So I don't have to break down which ones are adjustment counselors versus curriculum or PD. It's all collapsed together. How much we budgeted for tuition to Mass Public Schools. And this is also the secondary numbers. Even though we see it as two different budgets, they are one and the same when it comes to the state.
Is that why the transportation budget, again, now we are talking about this current year, the people's transportation line 7050 is so high?
Let me go back, 7050. Yes, so that would include special education transportation at both levels and our transportation through our contract with Vescus for both tiers, the elementary tier and the secondary tier. Schedule 19's annual school budget. These are the expenditures now from what the town has budgeted for this year.
I'm sorry, can we hang back with the people transportation for just a minute? So can you quickly scroll back and tell me what the number was this year?
I can't quickly scroll back, but I can get back to it.
And I'm not asking about regular, I'm asking about the special education. I just wanted to see what the numbers were.
For expenditure for special education?
Yep. I have the 24-25 number. It's the 23-24 number that I'm asking about.
So for age 6 through 21, I have 191,452.
And so it's now 201,623, even though we've taken at least one route off the books. So I'm wondering why it's been increased so much.
I don't know. I would have to look back into those numbers before I give you a definitive answer right now.
Okay. Yeah, I would definitely like to look at that number. The whole purpose of having the van was to reduce that number, and I'm not seeing it reduced, and in fact, it's being increased. Go ahead, Jackie.
The numbers that you just showed us, those are for pre-K through 12. So does that special education number include the secondary special education?
Yes.
And the first number is only the day or the special education for pre-K through 6?
I think the first number for special education should include the secondary as well.
It's
But
6
I'll
through
have to look.
21.
Okay, so that's what I was wondering, because you broke it down before, it was broken down into the secondary versus.
Yeah, and sometimes it separates preschool
But
versus,
but
yeah, it's in the lower
transportation
grades.
is
Yeah.
all of it, okay.
But we've taken a route off out of the budget, and yet the budget has increased by, I don't know, I lost the number, but something like $10,000. So how
Or
How is that possible?
projected? Is that what you budgeted and now it'll be less because you're doing actual? Because at the time, the budget, when you go to the budget, it wasn't, the van driver wasn't hired and you were still working on it, it didn't go live? So it was a budget
No.
in May, just.
I don't
throwing
think
out
so. I
some-
believe that we reduced it in anticipation of that van being on there. I'd have to go back and look. I don't have that in front of me, but I am curious why that's such an increase.
I'd have to look. I mean, it also includes a secondary. I don't know off the top of my head if some of those were for differences in secondary. And it is also what we budgeted versus what we spent. So there are some changes throughout the year, but I'd have to look at to break those down.
Right, but even if that's the case, I don't believe that we would have budgeted for more than we spent last year, knowing that we had the van and the van and anticipating the van driver. So you're going to ask me to sign off on this to send this to the state, and I'm questioning why that number is so large.
I know that we do have an additional need for transportation that I think was factored in, but I think it was at the secondary level. But I need some time.
I'm not aware that we had an additional need for transportation.
At the secondary level, I don't know.
I don't recall that coming to us. Do you recall that coming to this board?
I haven't heard about anything.
So,
When would that have come, Caitlin? Would that have been,
We had an additional out of district towards the end of last year.
okay. So it wouldn't have been something that came last month? Okay.
And the annual school budget appropriation by school committee, that's one I already went over. And then here's for the 24-25 expended by the town, what the town has budgeted for employer retirement contributions, insurance for active employees, insurance for retired school employees, school choice tuition, and again, for regional schools, expenditure summary, all fund types. This is everything combined all together. And that wraps up that one tab. There's reports that compare one year to the next, and it will target anything that has a significant change. It will look at if there was a review, if you needed to review those numbers. There were two, and those were, after investigation, were okay. The big part of the expenditures, like when I'm done with putting in all of the information, the two big pieces are these two at the bottom, Title I maintenance of effort and IDEA maintenance of effort. So maintenance of effort means that you are spending for Title I greater than 90% of what you spent the year previous. for IDEA, you need to spend more than you spent the year previous in order to be able to qualify for IDEA and Title I moving forward and not have to actually give back some of the money that you used. We're in a really good place because we are at 101.58% and 103.3%, which means we're spending more. We've met maintenance of effort, but we're not so much more that we're going to have trouble keeping up with it. There are exceptions to meeting maintenance of effort. If you, in one district, we had an out-of-district placement that was in 6th grade. They don't cover secondary in the district, so when they graduated out, we did not meet maintenance of effort for IDEA, but we go through DESE and we provide them with all of our invoices for tuition, for transportation, and we're able to prove we have an exception to it. And there are a few exceptions to be able to not make maintenance of effort, such as if you had at a district that graduates out, if you had a teacher, let's say you had a special education teacher that's at the top of the scale, they retire and you hire someone that's a lower step. That would also be if you're within that amount. Let's say you didn't make maintenance of effort by 20,000, but there's a 20,000 difference between what the teacher making that retired is and the one that you hired. That is an exception to not make maintenance of effort. Luckily, we don't have to worry about either of those because we met maintenance of effort for both Title I and IDEA. Some of the other schedules, this is where I put in the information and then it pulls it to the bigger one. So this is just going to be some of the things you've already seen duplicated. And then Schedule 18 survey, this is a survey on our teacher's contract, when it starts, when it ends, some of the COLAs, how many lanes, how many steps, what the lowest step, step 5 and top step is for bachelor's, master's, and your highest column for the contract, the current contract. Does your teacher contract include longevity? Explaining that. How many days in the contract? Health insurance amount covered by the employer versus the employee. And at the time, and do you provide your own self-operated regular special education transportation? We're now able to say that we are running our own. So that is, and then there's the cost calculator where it's a summary of our expenses. And that's the end of year report. Are there any other questions about the end of year report?
I have a clarification question.
Sure.
It's more of just asking why one's different than the other. In one section, there's a school choice tuition, and then I think there's another school choice tuition, and it has the tuition to Mass Public Schools. So the first one of the lines, if that's even helpful, is like 7280, and that one's saying like $900,000 for regular and 141 for special ed. But then if I look at 7645, there's nothing there. So I wasn't sure, like, it looks like one school year there's nothing, but then the next time it's mentioned, it's a lot bigger.
The first section's for what's expended from the school's budget, and the other section is what's expended by the city or town.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then in that first section where there's nothing, but then the school choice tuition is 130.49. That would include any child that is eligible to come to Erving Elementary and school choices to another school and secondary. So our, like, if once our, like our 7th plus general ed and any other child that school choices, but in the elementary age, is all included.
They're all included in one number.
Okay. And then if there's special ed school choice, that's in that other column.
That is not, so special education school choice, those numbers don't come out until the end of the school year.
Okay.
So they put them all together, whether it's special education or regular education in the same.
Okay, because there's 4884 in the special ed column, so I think it's a special ed column, yeah. So I just wasn't sure how accurate that was, I guess. Because it seems like a lower number.
Which line?
2220.
Yep, so those two numbers, the ones in blue, are auto-generated from the state, so they have it broken up by 130,490 for school choice tuition outgoing, and for gen ed, and 48,844. But those numbers do change as we get to the end of the year. So at the end of the year, we don't, because it goes to the town. But if the town sees a huge discrepancy, and they have in the past, of the special education school choice has gone up by 30,000 more than we anticipated. And then we've reached out to the sending districts before to confirm that there have been changes to student services that account for that increase.
Okay, thank you.
Of being 4,550,000.
Sorry, hold on, which 1327, is this the Excel row or the code for DESI?
Oh, if you want to do the code, it's 8715.
87 what?
15.
15.
You have the total expenditures of 4,558,124. Our budgeted that we went to town meeting with, it was 4,055,112. So I'm wondering where the extra $503,012 is coming from. Even if you adjust for the grants, which this isn't the way that this is listed, it still doesn't come out to the right amount. So there's a discrepancy there of $503,000.
So those amounts, those sums are done by the sheet, but I have to kind of go back through each one. So this is all funds, and also remember it includes revolving funds and the secondary and the town funds and the grants.
Well, the
and
town
circuit breaker.
Town
and rural aid.
appropriations is a different cell that's next to it. And if you take out the federal grants, the state grants, the circuit breaker, private grants, school choice tuition, which we don't take, all the other local receipts, all of that still doesn't come up to the 4,055,000 that we budgeted for at town meeting. So I'm just wondering why those numbers aren't reconciling.
I would have to go through each of the sums because it's computer generated.
Okay, because that's a significant, that's $503,000. That's a big difference. So, I'm not comfortable signing off on this with such a discrepancy unless it's clear why there's such a discrepancy.
I could say that for Title I maintenance of effort, which is not just special education, but all funds, for FY23 it was $5,697,151. At FY24, $5,787,015. So that slight increase is what you would expect to see from year over year. In FY22, same thing, $5,737,970.
I'm not sure what you just said. Honestly, what you just said to me, what I'm not understanding is how we could have budgeted and voted a certain amount at town meeting, but then when you calculate all the cells up, there's a difference of $503,000. So help me to understand how there's that big of a difference.
I'd have to look at the budgets and all of the grants and circuit breaker and other
Again,
components to it.
but those aren't counted, right? So those are different cells.
But which,
So if you're looking at line 8715, total expenditures, all funds, right? There's the 4,558,000. That's school appropriated. That's, let me get the language correct. That's school committee appropriations. Then there's a different cell that accounts for the town appropriations. And there's a different cell that accounts for federal grants, different cell for state grants, different cell for circuit breaker, different cells for lots of other monies. The money, the cell that I am speaking to, just the school committee appropriations is different than our budget that we voted at town meeting by $503,000. So not counting the circuit breaker, not counting grants, not counting what the town gives us, there's still a difference of $503,000.
Do you have those two, the budget amounts for elementary and secondary in front of you?
I have what was voted on we voted a budget of $4,055,112
For both?
for FY '25, Erving Elementary fiscal year. That's what we were asking the town for.
So the amount for total expenditures is for FY '24 and should be the amount expended for the elementary and secondary. So I'd have to compare, because for secondary, I mean, the tuition to mass schools alone was $1,084,184. I'd have to compare that to the secondary budget for, so again, that's, yeah, if, I can look at that into that for you.
Okay.
Can we vote to allow you to vote?
To
to sign when you feel comfortable signing, or do we have to wait until?
You can
we
vote to give me that
see?
authority, but until these are
Right,
figured
I
out,
just don't want to hold
I'm just letting
her
you
up.
know
So
that
if-
I'm not gonna sign for it.
Right, and I appreciate that. I just don't want to hold Caitlin up, that if you two are able to have that conversation and figure out where those loose ends are, that we then have to come back and vote for you to sign.
You
So
can give me
I'd
the
like to
authority
move
to vote.
forward with,
I say we go ahead and give you
voting,
the authority.
yeah.
Yeah,
So we'll
when-
make a motion to allow, the chair, Mackenzie Bailey, to sign the EOY, certificate of statement to FY '24 end of year report. Ooh. Okay, so that motion is in place.
Second.
Any other discussion about that? So I'll just let you know. So Caitlin and I will have to connect and get clarity on those, the differences in the discrepancy in those numbers, both in the transportation line and in the final, in the bottom number, total expenditures. That's my plan.
That sounds good.
All right, so motion in a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Dan, give you the thumbs up.
Yep. Very slowly.
So
Technology.
next, we already talked about lytics a bit, and I'm not going to go too much further into it, but I also wanted to mention that it also compares benefits. So it takes all of the benefits across the state and a lot of the language, and it's pulled that out of the contract so we can compare benefit lines for other contracts.
I'm sorry, can you just start over? Where are you right now?
The link.
We're talking about
Oh,
lytics.
okay, thank you. I thought you were still talking about the budget. Got it.
So we'll be able to compare for what our benefits look like to other districts and what their benefits look like. So if we're having a discussion about personal time, paternity leave, or any of those things, we have a great kind of quilt of all of the different benefits teased out from all of the contracts across the state.
And so is this something that the committee is going to be given some professional development on, some
So
training
honestly, I
on?
think the way that most districts use it, I don't know that the school committee members have their own login. Usually it is run sort of through my office. Shannon also has access so that we can kind of create things and look things on the spot when we're in negotiations. Or if you want to look at it with us during executive sessions, or if you've got questions about it, we can retrieve that information. But we
Because
have-
you're not always at every one of our meetings, so
could be.
that's gonna, well, yeah, now. Now you will, yeah. If that's the mode that it's gonna be used in.
I mean, typically I am for other committees. I'm usually at all the negotiations. And the Erving Elementary and Secondary budget drafts. The drafts of the FY26 budgets will be previewed at the November school committee meeting on November 19th. This is going to be a very preliminary draft because we'll likely not have the Union 28 budget voted on, so it'll be where we are with that. It will also not, there's no way that we would ever be far enough along in negotiations to have a real good projection of what salaries are going to look like. So there will be a lot of kind of estimating and using our software also to look at what are the trends and what can we safely budget for and estimate for COLAs and for longevity and for some parts of the budget. So you'll have the draft in November, but just as a warning, it is going to be a very preliminary draft.
Is Unit A negotiating this spring? Okay. We haven't received any notice that you're opening up negotiations?
Because I think A and B are both up, and
Well,
that was
B-
intentional.
B actually just ratified, so their contract.
Right,
so-
but wasn't it a year?
Yep.
Yeah, so that they intentionally did that so that they would be
Oh,
up at the
that's true.
same time.
Yeah, you're right. Yep,
So just to
And-
think about.
you're right. I've forgotten that it was just a year.
Then Erving Elementary and secondary expenditures. Do you have any questions about the expenditures on the list I gave you?
With the professional development, contracted services, that means that that is something that we are utilizing or we utilize them for training. I'm just curious, like specific to Lexia Learning, like are we using that for students? Or was that a professional development opportunity for a staff member to then, put those things they learned into place in the classroom?
I don't know. I'd have to look
Okay.
back at the warrant.
Just curious.
Any other questions? Okay. Was that it for your report?
Yep.
All right. Moving on to the principal's report.
Let me pull that up. I covered most of it. I have to get out of the budget thing, sorry about that.
It wasn't included.
It was. Here.
No, is there a report too, or is it just this? Maybe it's just this.
I think it's just what you're
Just that.
looking at.
Okay.
That's all we get.
One quick question on it, and that is when the enrollment breakout is done by rooms, there's no bright room specified.
Correct, because they're assigned, remember, Bright isn't just, it's not a sub-separate, it's a spot that they access.
So, okay, those
So
people.
they're included in their grade level.
Okay, makes sense.
So there's not much to read to that. It's a list of events. I've covered some of the recent things like open house and upcoming professional development for teachers.
And I know this might be like in the future, but I'm just gonna put a pin in it just to bring it to our attention. Looking at this, our 3s right now have 2. Not saying I don't want preschool, but also, looking at what the next year's 3s would be and maybe proactively doing more outreach to community, like families in Erving, before registration is due. I know Gillian does a great job, and I know there's a lot that goes into that. Not saying that the effort isn't there. It just will be interesting to see what happens to the preschool, because I think data shows, the census shows, like next year will be another lowish year, but then we jump again. So I also want to plan for that if we jump to 25 kids, we want to be aware of, do we need 2 preschools again? And does the school have the capacity? And do we have the classrooms and, all that stuff? Because look, we're down 10
Right, Gilly and
kids.
I recently talked about what were,
Awesome.
I asked what were the census numbers, and exactly what you said.
Yeah.
There's like a 2-year lump.
Gap, yeah.
I mean, where, I'm wondering, what does that look like? Because it's not just low numbers here, it's low census numbers. And what does that look like when we talk about kindergarten and first grade? I mean, a cohort of 4.
I know.
is not necessarily desirable for anyone. But then there is
An influx.
an influx of students who are students, they're not students yet, but children who are infants and toddlers. So it is something Gilly and I are chatting with. I don't know how much outreach we can do, because these numbers are not that far off of the census.
Right.
Then I think coupled with that, then we need to be thinking about opening up seats for school choice. And we could be very thoughtful about how many seats we open and where, but even having a classroom of 9 gets tricky sometimes. During cold and flu, you're down to 4 or 5 kids. So we could be very thoughtful about doing that, but ensuring that we have that rich learning environment for all of the students.
And can you, and I don't know the ins and outs, but because preschool isn't required, can you open up school choice and have it just be for preschool and not have to enroll them into kindergarten?
I was gonna ask the same question. I think you can.
You can, but actually I had reached out because I want to get clarification of, because we offer it, does that guarantee them a spot in our kindergarten?
Right. Because that's what I would be really nervous about, but.
But even with numbers at 2, even if we took a few school choice and we kept them
Yeah.
all the way through, we're not, that's gonna be the
Your
same
largest-
cohort every single year.
Yeah.
Your largest class is 16.
So it's not as if we're gonna
16 in
suddenly-
numbers, about 30 in personalities and everything else. So yeah,
But
on
certainly.
paper that looks very different than going to visit for a day. So.
I agree with you, but certainly with numbers around the 2, 3, 4, we could add a few and
Yeah.
still be reasonable.
I'm glad that you brought it up, because if these numbers pan out, it would be part of what I would present when we consider school choice, about what does that look like at what grade levels. But I certainly don't want to have those conversations yet. We still have, leadership changes and all of that. But I think when you're looking at these numbers, you have to think about how you're going to meet the needs of that cohort, and to start thinking about it now rather than when they're at your door is what best serves kids.
Right, for sure.
One of our neighboring schools has, or school districts has opened up a new preschool. And they've opened it up to other people outside their town. And I was curious as to what that may impact us now or in the future.
Well, one of the questions I have that I have reached out to my superintendent group, because I haven't dealt with this before in districts where I've worked, is that what is the reimbursement for, because it is not mandatory? is it not really school choice? Is it that we're opening it up for tuition?
Right, which I
because-
think that's the way it
And
is.
that changes because if it's not, once they're in for school choice, they get to stay until they matriculate out.
Right.
And that would be different for preschool
Right.
because
Because if
they
I'm
would
sending
pay
my
tuition,
preschooler somewhere,
they would have to
this
enter-
town's not paying for it.
correct. But then they are not covered by the school choice rules because we're not getting state money for them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we could still, open it up. It might just be, I don't know, a
We
different
might still want
process
to
or.
open it up, but it wouldn't
yeah.
necessarily guarantee that preschooler that they can stay through sixth
Yeah.
grade.
Right,
I think it's really we should be looking at it
Two ways.
Two ways, because we, again, still have numbers of 9 moving on. So you still, in theory, could open up a seat or two and be reasonable, even if a few more moved in. That's a different conversation than our preschool at 2 and needing more just preschoolers to run a program. Caitlin, I'm sorry, I forgot to ask you this question back in your report because we didn't go over the elementary budget per se. I did have a question about it's called the specialist teacher sped line. It's overdrawn by $79,975. That sounds like a teacher salary, so what happened there that we have that line so different?
So our grants have not been awarded yet. So once they are awarded and we know exactly what grants we're getting, then we go through every staff member and make sure that they're in the right place for whether they're grant funded, make sure they're in the right line. And so we just need a little bit longer till we're awarded those grants, and then we sort through all those lines and make sure they match to what we budgeted. And then I'll be able to say like, oh, we had someone leave and we actually hired a different position, which I don't think happened for this school, but it'll be a lot cleaner when we have our grants.
Okay. And when do you expect that all to shake out?
I have no idea. So last year it was late. They changed some of the applications, I think, for the title grant, so we didn't end up. They got kicked back a couple times, and I think we finally were awarded in January. So they've been submitted as of October 8th, and we're just waiting for final approval. So hopefully soon.
Okay. So by January-ish, we should be in a better shape in our budget.
Yeah, and
For
so
whatever
you'll
then.
also see some lines that are, sometimes if we have like the 2 instructional assistant lines, one's for special education and one's for general education, and when we have, let's say, a need for a one-on-one that comes up and we have a para that's reassigned or someone is hired, so sometimes you'll see like, well, that line's over by 40,000, but that line's under by 50,000, and those two things kind of cancel each other out.
Yep, got it. Okay, thanks. All right, so that's the principal's report. Anything else about that? No, okay. Erving Teachers Association. Come on up.
Hi, Andrea Elson, the speech science pathologist. We have some news from early elementary. Kindergarten has begun their once-a-month walking field trip to the library. It's lovely to see the students become familiar with this wonderful town resource and for them to begin building relationships with their local librarian, Andrea. And kindergarten will also be holding a fall-themed literacy event for the kindergartners and their families after school on October 22nd. This is a collaborative effort between Jamie Parse, Jessica Morris, Steve Kazmarzik, Melissa Mazzella, Wendy Arnold, and myself. The event will feature a story walk with a story, The Biggest Pumpkin Ever, loaned by Gillian Budine, as well as many other activities. I think we're trying to get back to some of those pre-pandemic family-like literacy activities that we used to do. For special education, there's a new IEP for Massachusetts. The special education team, made up of special education teachers and related service providers, have either attended a full-day workshop in September or are participating in 6 one-hour Zoom sessions to learn about and incorporate all of the changes. We've had several IEP meetings already this year, and we've included these changes. In other news, last week there was a beautiful plant dedication in memory of Sarah Muse, a former employee, parent, and volunteer. And for association information, the ETA has updated and approved our bylaws. The changes were minor, but updated terminology and roles and responsibilities. The ETA will continue with monthly potlucks. The social committee met and mapped out the food for the entire year. The ETA sponsored a pizza and salad luncheon as a kickoff event in September. For October, we will bring in a Halloween comfort foods on October 31st. The social committee also mapped our monthly staff meetings on specific Fridays after school. Several staff members went to an event in Deerfield for our October gathering. The ETA Executive Board welcomes Megan Gagney as a representative. And as mentioned last month, there will be a variety of speaking members who will provide this information during the ETA portion of the agenda. So every month you get somebody different.
Yay.
So thank you.
Thanks.
And Andrea, I always like to just share too, because this is like one of my favorite parts in the agenda. If there's ever any staff that wanna present or show us something they're doing or something they've learned or something they're super excited about, like, I love hearing it. I know coming at night is not always fun, but even if it's shared in an email or they want to come and present or share, like, anyone is always welcome to kind of share all the fun things that are going on in the classroom. So,
All right, I will pass
and that
that along.
can be invited into specials as well. It doesn't have to
Okay.
just be classrooms. It can be, specialists. It can be special teachers. All of the above.
We need a little bit of lead time so that we can make sure it's on the agenda, but other than that,
Yeah.
yep.
I know in the years, like, after school has come, like different activities.
You
have-
presented once,
Yeah.
Andrea.
Yeah. So if there's anything fun they want to share, I always encourage it.
Great, thank you for pointing that out. And thank you for the report. Budget and Personnel Committee. Do we have anything to report?
I'm not on that.
I know, I'm looking past you.
No, we didn't meet again.
We haven't met since our last meeting. I think we're good, right?
Right.
Yep. Dates are all blurring together. Union 28 Committee report. Our next meeting is on November 18th. I don't believe we have anything else to report for that one either. All right, so I do want to make a suggestion that we move the PI report up on the agenda to all the other kind of committees and updates that speak about it. PI always gets stuck at the end and, very few people are hanging on to the meeting at the very end, and it's important information. So I would like, unless anybody disagrees, to move that up to the agenda, somewhere in the reports from the tech school and the Gil Montague and PI, somewhere, right in that sort of beginning part of the agenda. We're now on to old business, so with no objections, I'll ask for that to be change made before I move on. No objections?
nope, that works.
Okay. So we want to talk about the DocuSign system program for signing of the warrants. So we've talked about this at length. We were waiting for kind of some clarity from the town's attorney. We got that clarity, I believe. So it's just a matter of having a formal vote on moving into that platform or not, is my feeling on it, unless anybody has anything else. Mark?
I have general concerns.
You have what?
I have general concerns
General.
about the warrants
Yeah.
and not about DocuSign. I can use DocuSign or I can come in here either way. So, I don't know if you want to hear my concerns first or just go ahead.
No, I'm gonna hear your concern.
Okay, the tendency is to come in, pull the packet, and sign off, and that, but that does not absolve us of our legal responsibility. I think I've caught 5 different things that should not have gone through. And in particular, the ones that are most outstanding are when either an address of a special needs student or the name of a special needs student come up. But there were some other ones as well. And you can't find those if you simply sign them, whether you do it through DocuSign or whether you come in here and look at it. If you just, and I know that they are going through again by the select board, and the select board has found the name of a student once, and I have a funny feeling, I'm not sure whether the town treasurer also came across the name of a student once in the last, and this is in the last 6 months. I just have a, I don't like the idea of, people just signing the packet without going through it. And whether one of us is given the responsibility of going through the packet, and other people take their word for it, or however we want to do it. It's a legal signature when you sign it, and you are approving every single purchase that's in that packet when you sign it as a school committee member.
Right.
And the same goes for when the select board does. And as I say, at least one of the select board members goes through the packet in detail. Whether it's through DocuSign or, now, some of them, if I come in here and I grab the packet and I go down to the office there and I sit down, and if I come across something, I can immediately say, hey, you missed this, and they can black it out. Because it's very easy to, to not see the address or something. And I don't know how well that would work in DocuSign or not, but that's an area of concern.
I think regardless of whether we do DocuSign or not, it's an area of concern simply because it keeps happening. And we, it's something that's been happening and continues to happen. So more checks and balances in the business department need to be put into place to prevent that. Because we shouldn't be catching it, and for sure the select board shouldn't be catching it.
However, when we're going to put our signature on it, I think it's as a legal statement. I'm saying my sense is that if you're in an accounting office and you're going through these things one after another and another, sure, there needs to be responsibility there. However, when it comes down to who said legally this piece of paper is okay, it comes down to the signatures that go on it, whether they be ours or the select board or the treasurer or whoever.
That's true. I mean, it's a good reminder to all of us that we need to be very diligent about going through them, and not just kind of blindly signing them. But so I think I think there's two statements to be made there. That a good reminder to us that we need to be really careful about going through it, but also, more checks and balances need to be put into place. This isn't a huge district. We're not talking about thousands of children, and we're talking about a few families that have these particular services. So it should be able to be managed internally before it even ever gets to us.
Can I speak to that? So we did have one caught that went through student support office, went through the business office, was signed off by school committee, and then did get picked up at the very end by the select board. And we apologized for that. And we did review our practices, and we've requested no invoices with any student names on them anymore. And that is our practice moving forward.
Good.
Thank you.
That I don't think includes the one I caught in the office here, or I don't know if there were two that I caught here when I was going through the papers. But I mean, that may be the one that since then that got through. I appreciate the apology. It's just, I'm just saying we are responsible when we sign, and.
Yep, you're right. As I said, that's a good reminder. So regardless of whether we in-person signed it or docu-signed it, the statement still remains that we are responsible for these bills. But the advantage of the DocuSign is that it would allow us, to access the warrants at times when the school is not open. I, for one, I'm not out of work in time to come here when the school is open. So it's prevented me from being able to sign them because I'm simply not able, I would have to de-alarm the school, go in, unlock the doors. It would be a process. So this would allow me to be able to sit at home at 9 o'clock at night and look at the warrants if I wanted to. Yep, that's how my life goes.
So with DocuSign, it scans everything in, so you should be able to see all of the same papers,
Front and back
right?
of everything.
I think my question that came in my head when Mark was speaking is if we find something, and you don't have to answer this now if there's not like a procedure in place just yet because we haven't done this, what is the best course of action to notify you guys? Because I don't think we can edit or change anything in DocuSign. We can only sign. So I think that would be like a question to have.
Just not sign it and
Okay.
email me and Emily, and we'll fix it
Okay.
immediately.
That's what we would have to do if we find something. And there were at least 2 other things besides names and addresses that I came across during the year. And so we would end up, if we saw it, we would then pass an email on and send you an email and say, this is in here and shouldn't be, or this is done this way and shouldn't be.
Mm-hmm. And we came to the conclusion that it's all or nothing. It's either on DocuSign or it's on paper.
Yes, I think we have to. I assign the 2 signatures that you want, so it goes to those 2, and we can send the warrant to the entire committee. We do that for other committees. The warrant gets sent to everybody. But then for DocuSign, you would have 2 signature lines and it would get sent to 2 school committee members. So if we could stay consistent with the 2 school committee members, I think that would also alleviate a lot of the challenges around, I thought that it was already done, I thought that this person did it, I didn't know it wasn't done, just 2 people.
Why does it only provide 2 lines?
Well, you can do up to 4 lines if you all want to sign it, but I think, it would alleviate a lot of the challenges we've had around assuming someone else has done it if you assigned it to 2 people to sign it every time.
I think internally we've adjusted our practice to accommodate for that. We have not had an issue with not knowing if it's been signed or not, because internally we've worked that out. I would like, though, it to be available to be signed by, really we're a 5-person board ideally, so 5 people. There should be availability of 5 signatures on it. If 5 of us wanted to all sign that warrant, I don't want to not allow somebody to be able to sign it that wants to sign it. So if we move forward with the DocuSign, I would want to make sure that there were availability for 5 people to sign it if they wanted to.
I also wouldn't want to have assigned people in the sense that, our board has been down at times, and then some people do go on vacation, and so,
Yeah.
I would.
I think that's something internally that we will work out. I agree with you, Mark. I think we need to have the flexibility of 2 signatures on it. And again, I think we've put in internal controls to accommodate for that. For the last, several signings, it's been clear who's signed and who hasn't. So,
Can I speak to that? I'm sorry. I just have to. We did get an email from the town on Friday because it still wasn't signed after over a week, and we had to kind of connect with the town and figure out how they were going to get it and how it was going to get signed at the very last minute.
This week?
Last week's. It got to them on Friday.
no, you signed it, Caitlin, and you signed it, Mark.
On Friday. But I think there's still some confusion of who's going
It's not confusion. It's simply a matter of getting over here. Other than Mark, who has the luxury of being retired, the rest of us, or the 2 of us, are working. So it's just a juggling act of getting over here on time.
And answering the email and saying, I did it, when it's done. And I've even said, look, when it's done, I can take it to town hall on Friday, I can put it in there. And I have yet to be asked to do that, but,
Big Mark, you're always the first one that signs it, so it's never ready.
no, you can still send me, if you get 2 signatures in,
We'll keep
and
you-
it's Friday in, Town Hall's locked, you can email me or call me and say, Mark, can you stop over? And I can come and pick it up and go over to Town Hall. Frequently, I have other reasons to go to Town Hall, and pick documents up for other purposes. So,
All right, so that's, I think that's where we're at right now. I think if we move forward with DocuSign, what we would want to do is have the availability of all of the board to sign it, any and all of the board to sign it. We will internally take care of who signed it, who hasn't. Will that always be perfect? It will not. There may be weeks where it is a scramble, simply because, we're all doing the best we can here, but we will endeavor to be better at that, as you all will be endeavoring to be better at making sure that nothing slips through. That's all we can hope for. Is there any other discussion about this before we want to move on to making a motion and deciding if we're going to do this or not?
I move that we move forward on having DocuSign available, or have it the way in which warrants are signed. And while we still will require 2, it will be an option for any of us to sign.
I'll second that.
Okay. Any other discussion about that?
It was a thumbs up.
Thumbs up? Okay, thanks for watching.
I saw movement.
I know, that's all, on the corner of my eye, that's all I saw. Okay, all right, so all in favor? Aye. And Dan's thumbs up. All right, so Caitlin, I don't know how long that will take you to put that together and start it, so just let us know when it's,
We can do it on the next warrant.
But there are warrants here to be signed.
yeah,
Yeah,
right
they're
here.
right here.
They're right here,
Okay, you guys,
right here.
We haven't done anything, I just grabbed them.
Yep.
okay, if you want me to go through them, I'll be doing it tomorrow.
Okay. All right, so we are, let's see, capital planning formation, so discussion and possible votes. So this was a discussion we had about the structure of the capital planning committee, right? Whether it's gonna stay a committee or a
Oh, what's the wording? Now that you said
it's
that.
not a subcommittee anymore,
No.
it's something else.
Do the working group.
I think that's what it is.
It's like a representative group, or,
Yeah.
a non,
What are the problems with having it be a subcommittee the way it currently is?
go ahead. You just-
Problem might be not the right word, but it as we
Challenge.
talked about, where when I didn't realize I was the one that had to make the most, initiate the posting of it, then that meeting that we had scheduled, we couldn't have because it wasn't posted for 48 hours.
All right, look,
It's that kind of stuff. So I mean,
Okay,
I guess
here,
if we're
let me
all on
make
the
an
same
offer.
page,
Let me
we
make an
figure
offer.
this.
let me make an offer. I know how to ask for items. I know how to make up an agenda 1 week ahead of time and to ask it to be posted. Okay? So I will do that, and I will chair a meeting. I will not take minutes. You can't read my minutes. I can't type. Okay? That's off the table. But I will do the rest.
Yeah, I
If
don't
you
think
want.
there wasn't a problem. It was just it limits us a little bit on what we have to make sure we're upholding to. Where working group was a little more laid back. And we thought that the subcommittee is absolutely fine and that it holds everyone, to that meeting and gets everyone involved. So I was fine with that. I just wanted to make sure it was known that there was a shift in what that committee actually looked like and how it was made up. And I don't think that was made aware or explained really well a year ago when it happened. So it was more of just bringing that awareness, making sure the committee felt comfortable with it still being a subcommittee and that it's still meeting our needs. And I think that with the big projects that we have going on, it's doing just that. But it's more about just being really transparent and making sure everyone is on the same page and knows kind of what's going on.
I would just echo that. I think in a you know, after we get over these big projects, if we want to relook at it, when we're not doing major work on the building and it's just kind of a keeping up to date on things. But now that we're kind of in the thick of these really major, important building projects, I would like to keep the formality of it being a meeting, it having minutes, it being posted publicly. Just, you know, just to keep the paper trail.
And we will have to have a building committee too, if we, move forward.
They'll
So-
be independent of us.
Right, no, I'm saying there's gonna be many committees that it's not just capital planning that will take place, so I didn't want anyone to be like,
That's true.
why is it only capital? But,
Yep, as we get further down the road on this. So,
there's a lot of stuff. So I agree, I think it's, we've learned what we have to do. Mark and I are taking it, and everyone heard that Mark now wants to.
Well, I mean,
Mark
that's-
is in charge of posting it. I think that's a
an
great
easy
idea.
thing to do.
Spreading
I know how to
responsibility to
do
new
it,
people.
okay?
Yep,
It's
yep.
in my head, I know how to do it, and like I say, I send out an email, I get everything from the last meeting, plus anything new, I put it together, I send it out, I say, is this good enough? If you don't respond, if somebody doesn't respond, tough, it's gone.
good enough.
And, then I send it in, and I'll send it in to Robin and say, post this, and it'll go out.
Wonderful.
And,
All right.
Yeah, so I
That's
think
your wheelhouse. Excellent.
no vote needed, where I think we're good
Yep.
as we are.
Oh, do we have
maintain
to change? Is that the chair or not the chair? You would still be the chair, or not?
We haven't even voted on any of that. I've just done the work. So I think internally we can come up with a organization.
Okay, we won't worry about it.
Yeah,
Okay, but I will do the
perfect.
Postings.
posting
An agenda.
and agendas.
And I will take the minutes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Look at that. Wonderful. All right. Surplus equipment update. So you had mentioned to me that you had gotten the group together. They're looking into it, but they need some more time to just finish that work.
Right, so, and I did offer them that grace because they had a lot of things going on here, opening school and hosting everybody, and it has not been done in a while, so
Yeah.
it's a bigger job than I anticipated. I think even they anticipated initially, so we have 3 pockets. We have Eric, who's gonna, is going through and looking at facility type of surplus. We have Tom looking through computer and technology surplus, and then Pat and David are working at general surplus, whether could be furniture, could be books, that sort of thing. So they've begun the work, they just don't have an exhaustive list. They will have something for me to present in November. But it was a bigger task than I had anticipated, and that's okay, that's just where we are, and it'll be something that we're monitoring going forward.
That's so that was the point I was going to make. Obviously, it's just going forward now. Once we get back to base
a
level,
baseline, right.
if we could, every few months have this checked in on. Great. Okay. So the 7D van driver, I don't know that we need to keep having this on here unless there's something new.
No news is good news.
Okay. Did the ad for the sub go out, sub driver?
I believe so, I will confirm that. with
And
Robin.
could you continue to put it into the Around Town newsletter for as long as, we need it? So every month by the 10th, they have to have it for the coming month. And I'm glad no news is good news.
No news
That's
is good
wonderful.
news.
I'm so happy to have that. Oh, the other thing that I just wanted to ask, if you could look into, especially with your superintendent group, is kind of what the process and procedure would be if we wanted to take on like a midday route from another district or something like that. So we have that capability, what would that look like? How would we figure that out? How do you figure out rates? How do you figure out contract for that?
I don't know, Caitlin, we had sort of chatted about this before, but I think, or maybe it was Amy. I take that back. It might have been Amy I chatted about it with. I'm sorry. I had asked our director of student support services, like, what does that look like? And she was going to reach out to her group because she felt like they would be able to have a better answer for her about how does that contract out.
Yep.
And so I will follow up and get her feedback.
That's wonderful.
From that group.
I know that there are so many districts around that are looking for transportation. It would be great if we could supplement our own budget by.
One of the challenges here that I do know that came up in that discussion, I apologize that I said it was you, Caitlin, it was Amy, is that the Erving student, we have an agreement because we don't have a sub driver, you know, it's been posted, we don't have one, that parent is going to transfer and then we'll get the daily reimbursement rate. And so if we took on other people, what would that look like in a sub situation? Right now it works because the Erving family is partnering with us and very excited. I mean, it's a great situation for them, right? And so, but for it to be successful, because we don't have a sub driver right now, whoever, if we looked into taking on, would have to understand that that would be part of the deal, because we just don't have that flexibility.
But even if
right
we
now.
could get it all in place and then not implement it until we had a sub, at least we would know what that process
What it
was.
looks like.
We could create any policies or procedures that needed to be created. We could get it all in place. Pie report.
That is me. So we had our first PI meeting of the year on October 7th. We had 4 parents in attendance, which was super exciting, even some new faces, and we are always welcoming more. There is no commitment required. You can join whatever time that you're available, if it's 1 month out of the year, if it's a couple months out of the year, if it's a certain season, or you just have some opening time in your schedule for a month or two and want to join, you are absolutely more than welcome. We will take any and all participation. And things that we discussed were fundraisers or upcoming events. The apparel store is now open, and we are super excited to share that we are keeping it open all year long. So we left summer, springish clothes in there, but we also put fall, winter clothes in there, and you can kind of order them at your leisure. And you have the option to get it shipped directly to your house, or you can pick it up in Greenfield at, I believe we use Silver Screen, but where it will tell you. So that is really exciting, because before it used to be like a 2-week time frame and it was only limited, and we know that people's when they want the apparel and budgeting and everything else can get a little tricky around those deadlines. So we want all Erving families who want Erving apparel to have access to it.
And there's a lot of stuff in there.
There
Just
is
about
a lot of
anything
fun
you might
stuff.
want.
So it has been shared in the newsletter, and we've asked for that to be kind of like an ongoing share. It will be shared on Facebook. And so there is a direct link that you can click on, or you can scan the QR code to get that link to your phone if you wanted. So we're excited about that. We've talked about possibly having a movie night coming up. So that's something to keep eyes and ears open for once details come out. And then we talked about doing the calendar raffle again. So having that available around the holiday season, and then drawings would occur in January. So those are a couple of things to look forward to. Information, once dates and stuff is there, will always be in the newsletter and posted on Facebook. And then we meet on the first Monday of the month. So the next meeting will be November 4th at 7 p.m. on Google Meet. And the link is shared in the newsletter and on Facebook as well. So yeah, if you want to on November 4th, come join us.
Did you say 7?
Yes, 7. We say 7 to 8. Sometimes it ends a little earlier. So, and if you can only stay for, the first 30 minutes, because I know sometimes that's a tricky time. It's really no commitment, low level kind of thing. Just come learn and participate.
Cool. Excellent. All right, will you, Shannon, take care of moving that on the agenda, or do you need me to email Robin?
No, I made myself a note.
Okay, thanks. All right, so executive session. So we have an executive session on here to speak about strategies with respect to collective bargaining. We will do that executive session. We do have the Unit B contract has been ratified by Unit B, so we can take a look at that tonight. And then we will discuss the minutes. So,
Next school committee meeting.
well, yes, but before I move off of this, so the thing though is that we would, if we were going to vote the budget, we would vote it in open session, so we would come back to open session.
Okay.
If we are not intending to vote on it tonight, then we would not need to come back to open session. So we've lost our audience, but I do want to, it would make a difference for the people at home. Do we want to, I guess what I'm asking is, do you want to have a discussion about the contract and then make a new meeting time to potentially vote on it if we are in agreement with it? Or do we want to try and do that tonight? We can have a meeting where we can even have it remotely, where it's simply, that's the only item on the agenda, would just be ratifying the contract. So it would be a very short meeting in theory, unless there was big discussions about it, but,
I'm fine with either.
You're fine with what?
Either, whatever you prefer.
I'd rather put it off, do it as a remote, separate, short meeting.
okay. Okay, so in that case then, I'm actually going to say that we would then not need the executive session because our minutes need to be submitted.
They've been submitted.
Oh, that's right, I got them. Never mind, we will need the executive session. They are right here in my hand. Okay, so we will move into executive session, not to come back to open session then. Our next meeting will be on Tuesday, November 19th at 7 p.m. And Erving policy meeting will be on Tuesday, November 19th at 6:30, so half an hour before our school committee meeting. All right, I need a motion to adjourn.
I'll motion to adjourn at 9:30. Oh,
Sorry, to move into executive session.
Oh.
I apologize, not to adjourn, but to move into executive session
and not return.
and not return to open session.
Second.
So we'll roll call vote this. So
I'm a little.
Bailey, aye.
Mark Latchley, aye.
Okay, thank you. Sorry?
Dan have to vote?
Oh, Dan can vote, yep, and Dan is voting in the affirmative.
Are
Thank
we
you.
inviting anyone?
No,
Okay.
no, we're just going over minutes, we don't need to invite anybody. And Dan will not be joining us in
But we
executive session.
still have to adjourn the meeting.
Yes. The open meeting, yes, thank you.
At 9:39.
Okay, you're making a motion to adjourn the
Yep.
open meeting at 9:39, thank you. Mark, you're seconding that?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do you need me to stop?
I don't know. Nope. Thank you, thank you. All right.